Hey YouTube, in this video I'm going to be talking about how to use competitions to get faster. And this is a very important video because any competition you do before June is essentially void. It doesn't really matter because your end of the season ends in August, September, and it's only the final 3-4 months that actually matter, because that's when you actually going to be peaking. And you want to make sure that you're peaking as efficiently as possible, which means you need to see any problems you have and you need to get rid of them as soon as possible, which is where competitions come into play. Because earlier on in your season, you're working on match velocity, working on form, you're working on speed, working on whatever, but your form has probably improved. It might be for the blocks, might be for top speed mechanics, might be for the transition phase, it doesn't matter where it is, but that's one area that you've improved, but that improvement might have skewed your abilities in the other areas that you have, or maybe you improved in all areas. But the point is, you need to mash all of that together and see how you perform when you actually go for a full sprint, because very rarely will you get into the blocks and do a 100-meter sprint timed to see how quickly you can get to that finish line. Very rarely will you ever do that in your season, other than during competition. Which means you need to do more competitions so you're able to tell. The reason being is, if you don't do competitions, most likely what's going to end up happening is June's going to roll around. You're much faster than how you were before, but you don't know how much faster. You find out how much faster. Maybe you're happy, maybe you're sad. But if you're unhappy, just think about this. If you did competitions earlier on, think about all of these. If you're unhappy, think about what would happen if you did competitions earlier on. Like, the problems that you have now could have been avoided, but because you didn't do any competitions earlier, you're just being thrown straight into the deep end. For example, maybe you come out of blocks and you stumble out, and that could have been avoided if you did a competition earlier on, because you had adrenaline and you was under the same text of trying to run, pretext of trying to run as fast as possible. So you would have stumbled earlier on in the season and you would have got whatever time you got now earlier. And if that happened, you would have been able to learn from it and have enough time to improve. And chances are, what's going to end up happening is, if you don't do any competitions earlier than June and you don't do as many as possible, I would say at least 2 per month. When June rolls around, if you're going to end your season in August, you've got June, July, and August, 3 months to spot all of the problems you would have spot in something like, January, February, March, April, and May. 5 months. And if you started competitions in December, that's 6. That means you would have had 6 months to do what you now have to do in 3 months. So think about that. Will you be able to get all of that 3 months worth of, so all that 6 months worth of work you would have been able to do in 3 months? Most likely not. And imagine what would have happened for your season if you got that 6 months worth of work done and dusted. These final 3 months you could have worked on polishing yourself so you could try to be as fast as possible. Because the chances are, how fast you'd end up closing your season if you only start competing from June or even just May onwards would be much slower to what you would have been able to achieve if you started competing much earlier, because you're not given as much time to prepare so you can see what you're able to do. Because maybe you're going to end your season with a time of 11.5, for example, but if you started competing 6 months earlier than June or 5 or whatever, that means maybe you could have improved by 0.2 or 0.3 extra seconds, but instead you've got a PB of 0.5 instead of a PB of 0.3 or 2. Because if you start to do competitions earlier on, here's another reason why it's so important, is that you get to compare where you are in your season before even your season's actually even technically started, where you are in your season before compared to the previous years, especially if you competed earlier on than June. And even if you didn't compete earlier on than June, because as long as you trained properly, you'd be able to estimate how much you're going to be able to improve from June onwards. For example, if from June you ran a time of, let's say 11.9 last year, and then you managed to get to 11.7 by August, that means if you're running an 11.5 by the time the end of May rolls around, that means you know that June onwards, you're probably going to be able to improve by at least 0.2, as long as you haven't peaked, because the best parts of your sprinting will always happen later on in your season, as long as you haven't peaked. And another reason again is if you get to see all of these problems early on, you get to improve your form so that when you manage to peak, your stride length's longer and your stride frequency is higher, because you only really have the highest stride frequency when you're peaking, and your stride length can be widened obviously whilst you peak, but not by much. But if you're able to drastically improve these before you even get around to June and you haven't peaked, you make sure you haven't peaked, your abilities when you actually go to compete and do your best in your actual season, when it actually is finally starting to get hard, people have finally starting to drop their times to where they were last year, then you know you're going to be able to perform at your best. And if you don't do competitions earlier on, you won't be able to know what's been going well for you and what hasn't been. Because if you haven't been doing competitions until June, there might be something you've been doing in training now. You might be thinking, yeah, this is making me fast, this is making me fast, I'm getting faster by doing this. And then the competition rolls around and you realize, oh my God, what just happened? Which leaves you with only 3 months to fix this problem that you've been cultivating for at least probably 9 months. Which is obviously not very good, because you want to be improving and get rid of these problems so that when June rolls around, which is why you want to make sure you compete earlier, when June rolls around, you want to make sure that every competition is muscle memory and flawless. You want it to be so that your forms basically come to the best it's going to be, or maybe just a bit off, and every single race you have is muscle memory, and your stride length widens a bit, your stride frequency widens a bit, and just keep PPing as you get closer and closer to August or September or whenever your season ends. But if you end up competing later, like when your season's supposed to start, then all of these problems again condensed into 3 months, and chances you can fixing a problem that would have taken you 5 or 6 months, basically no, there's not a chance. Your body won't be able to fix the problems that quickly, and most likely they are not going to happen all at once in one race. They're going to come as you fix them. You might fix one problem and then 2 more show up, and then you fix these 2 problems and then 5 more show up. They don't come all at once. They come bit by bit by bit as you try to fix your form problems. And 3 months would result in you getting faster and slower and faster and slower. And this is going to look the best when you end your season and you see all of your times lined up. You see you had a fast time, and then you had a slightly slower time, and then you had a fast time again, then a slower time and a slower time and a slower time, and then a fast time. You're going to look at this and be like, I'm much better than this. This didn't need to happen. But you won't be able to do anything about it because you only had 3 months to fix 6 months worth of problems. So what's going to end up happening is these problems that you could have fixed in one season are going to get rolled over into the next season, and that's going to hinder your progress as you try to get faster and faster as the seasons progress. I'm not going to say you're not going to get faster, but you're not going to be able to deal with the problems as quickly as you want. And the final benefit towards competing more is you have more competition footage. So you're able to actually see these problems, and your coach is able to see these problems. Because like I said, 1 problem might come and then 2 more might come, then 5 and however more. But in one video, it might be perfect other than one thing perfect. But until you fix that problem, you're not going to be able to see these other problems. But if you had more competitions and you actively worked on trying to fix these problems as you went by, you would be able to see all of these, and you'd be able to compare, see what went well, see what didn't go well, what you removed that you still need to keep as you improve your form, what you need to get rid of completely as you try to improve your form. All of these things you're not able to see because you only have so many races, you can only do so many races in 3 months. What makes it even worse is you only do so many high quality races in 3 months. Because technically, in 3 months, you'd be able to pull off 90 races. But the chances of you pulling off 90 races are minuscule. Most likely, at most, you're going to be competing 5 times per month. Maybe 10. But I highly doubt that. Most likely 5 to 7 times per month. And if you don't really compete much, then it's going to be like 3 per month. Which means by the end of a month, by the end of the season, you might only have 9 videos of you competing, doing whatever events you do. And what are you going to really do with that? How are you going to be able to really improve? Because by the time you've gotten all those 9 videos, enough to start being like, okay, I need to fix that, and that, the season's ended. So this is going to be a problem you're going to roll into next season, when instead you could have got rid of all of these problems, which 6 months worth of problems being condensed into 9 videos, so that from June onwards, if there were any problems, there wasn't too many, and you're actually going to be able to fix them when the next season rolls around, which is what you want to do. You want to make sure you bring as little problems from your last season into your new season as you possibly can. That's the real game of trying to improve. Get rid of as many problems as you can before your season starts, and when your season does start, get rid of as many of those problems before your next season starts. It's just a cycle. But if you compete late, you're not going to be able to benefit from the cycle. Instead, it's like you don't do your homework and you get like 2 pieces of homework per month, and you get detention after about 6 months for not doing any of your homework, but your teacher doesn't let you off. The teacher doesn't get rid of all the homework. The teacher says, okay, I'm still going to give you homework I'm still going to give you 2 pieces of homework every month, and you have to catch up on that other homework you had, which means you still have 12 pieces of homework you need to catch up on, and then there's going to be 2 more that are going to be coming this month and the next month and the next month. But if you just stayed up to date with all of this homework, you could have got rid of it all, so that you only had to make sure you was dealing with 2 pieces of homework every single month instead of dealing with 14 and 13 and 12, and maybe you'd be able to take out 2 each time. But even if you was able to take up 2 each time, by the time the school year ends, and in this case the season, you still got another 12 pieces of homework and 12 pieces of problems that you haven't been able to get rid of, and most maybe you still have 4. But you don't want to have this many problems if you don't have to, because again, it's going to hinder you, and if it's hindering you, it's not going to be able to help you improve as fast as you want, and you're going to end the season unhappy. If you like my video, like the video, let me know in the comment section below. Check the description, because anything I forget to say in the video, I always put in the description. And if you like my content, subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. I post every 2 days at 1 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. If you don't know when that is, just hit the bell and then you'll be notified instantly.